Hey, what's up? Andrew Kramer. Welcome back. Let's go and set up our footage and our comp and get everything ready for building our assets. So I'm going to create a new composition. Now, this is important. This is going to be our render comp. And you only want to have usually one render comp per visual effects shot. You don't want to be having a bunch of copies and a bunch of pre-comps because it's going to get confusing. And the one final comp is going to somehow get neglected and you're going to render out the wrong one. And you do not want that, especially if the shows are completely different and all of a sudden it's like space and then it goes to some like leprechauns jumping over mountains and stuff. I mean, it turned out that movie, actually won some awards, but that was just good luck. You really ought to be careful. We're going to go ahead and set the width 1280 by 720, 720p. And square pixels, and the frame rate 24. Resolution full, duration 400 frames. Looks good. We'll go ahead and hit OK. And you can hold down Control and click on the time to switch between frames and seconds. We'll set it at seconds for now. Now, I've imported one of our assets, a piece of footage of Sam holding a gun, and you'll notice the footage is at 59.94 frames per second, and that is correct. This is actually high-speed footage to a degree. It's 60p shot with the JVC HD200. Now, it's not necessary that you shoot high speed, but we happen to have the equipment, and we did anyway. And it will help for slowing things down and giving it that smooth look. Well, you can also use After Effects, pixel motion, and time remapping, which we will get into as well. And the other thing you want to consider is shooting at a higher shutter speed so that you don't see the motion blur. Now, we are using one of those lens adapters for 35mm lenses, and the problem is if you turn the shutter up too much, you start seeing the screen, and we just didn't have time to calibrate it. They don't really like you bringing guns out in public areas. We had permits and everything. They just weren't real. So back to our composition. I'm going to take our footage of Sam, drag it out, and this is going to be our starting point. And what we want to do is kind of rough out what this visual effects shot is going to look like. So it plays full speed, but I want it to play full speed and then slow down as he pulls it out. And that way it's not such a jarring reaction. So what we're going to do is right click, choose time, enable time remapping. And if you're in After Effects 6.5, you go to layer, time remapping is in this area. And that's going to bring up two keyframes, and that's going to be the front and the back. And so we'll go to maybe about here, just as the gun's coming out, and we'll set a keyframe. And we'll go to about when we want to shoot here, also set a keyframe. So now this sets the distance of, our action. And what we want to do is spread this action out so that it takes a little longer. And what I'll do is take these two keyframes, and if we move them both over, that way the relationship between it stays constant and the speed isn't changed yet. And I'll go ahead, select this, turn on the track editor. There we go. And we're going to go ahead and smooth this in to a slow motion shot. So select this keyframe, hit F9, we'll come back in here. And so now we have the keyframe there, and we want things to start slowing down. So we'll straighten this one out. And that way it's constant speed, and then it starts to slow down here. And then we want this part to also be slow as well. So we'll extend it out. And if you look at this, this is kind of velocity over time. So here you can see it's kind of going at like a 45-degree angle. That means it's going real time. And then right here, it kind of bends down, and that starts meaning that we're slowing down, and anymore, it's going to really slow down. And if we bring it down even lower, it's going to be moving a couple of frames at a time. So that's just kind of what we're looking at here. Go ahead and close that, and we'll see how things are looking at the time. Okay, so you can see it's real time here and then starts slowing down. Well, I want it to slow down even more. So I'm going to grab these two keyframes and move them over. And so we'll check that out. I'm just hitting 0, by the way, to preview. All right. So that is looking a little bit better. And so then he pulls the trigger right here and we get a little bit of him moving his hand up. Now that we have the shot set up, let's go ahead and create our 3D world inside of After Effects. And so what I've done is taken some still images in the camera right after we took this video. I just panned the camera in about 180 degrees, and so now I have these shots. So what I'm going to do is drag them down into our comp. I'm just going to bring the first 5, drop them in here. And then I'm going to turn on the 3D switch for all the elements, and we're going to create a new 3D camera. And we'll set it to 50 millimeter, and that's actually the camera focal length that we had. We'll choose OK. And what we want to do is animate the camera rotating in the general direction of our shot. So we'll hit R, brings up our orientation and our rotation, and we want to rotate the y-axis over in this direction. So we'll set a keyframe at 0. We'll move forward a few seconds and we'll turn it this way, maybe 100 degrees. Maybe just do like a little over 100 also. Negative 130 is good. I'll spread that out just a bit. So what we're doing here is basically faking our animation so that we can perfectly line up our pictures. And this is kind of a cool way to line the pictures up in a perfect circle. So what I'll do is just shut these off, and we have our first picture here. I'm going to put it above the SAM layer just for a moment. And I'm going to parent it to the camera. Actually, before we do that, let me show you what we're looking at. Here's our video layers. Here's our camera. When you create a 3D camera in After Effects, the camera automatically sets its distance to fit the video right inside the frame, which means if this is a 50 millimeter camera and our footage was shot at 50 millimeter, then we're actually at exactly the correct distance from our layer as our true camera in the real world. And so as this camera rotates, it's also going to see our other pictures. So what we want to do is take our other pictures and move them so they sort of line up in a semicircle, so the camera, as it pans around, it's perfectly matching up with them. Now the trick is getting them to perfectly align, and so the way we're going to handle that is we'll go back to the active camera, and we'll come in here. And so here is our first still image, and I'm going to parent it to our camera. And by parenting it to the camera, it's going to stay hooked to the camera. And if I lower the opacity, you can actually see what that's doing. So it's still panning the layers, but this layer, it's a 3D layer, but it's just stuck to the camera and it's just following along with it. But look right in this area. As we pan, you can see, oh, it almost lines up. And if we were to look at the top view, you can see the distance is perfect and it lines up with the camera exactly how we want it to. So the trick is to simply rotate it until it lines up very close. And we'll come in here and page down, page up to kind of get it close. And once you get it close, unparent it. And then what you can do is move it around and scale it up until you get it to line up with that element a little bit better. So you just move it around. I'm working with very limited space here, but we'll do our best. So it's okay if there's a little bit of a line there. We're going to fix that probably a little later, but I do want to scale it in here better. And also using the arrow keys to move it around in 3D space a bit. So this will work for this particular shot for right now. And then what we're going to do is parent our next image to the video as well. And so I'm going to take our footage and just bring it to the bottom. Turn on the second one. And remember, you have to do it at the very beginning of the animation. And then parent it to the camera. And then we'll go forward. And you can lower the opacity so that you can see it a little bit better. But if I move around, it's going to line up just right. So if we look here, the picture that is staying in the shot is the one that is parented to the camera. And it's the next one in our sequence. So we have these two things on the back of the dumpster, and here they are in this shot. So we'll just line those up approximately, and then we'll go ahead and unparent that, and we'll move this up, line this up, bring the opacity back up on it. You can also rotate it to get it match up too, or just scale it down just a bit. You want to be looking for different items in the scene to reference, you know, to kind of match it up. So I'm looking at this and this line here. So I'm going to scale it up a little bit. Okay, and then we'll go ahead and do this again for all of the images. I'll go ahead and just kind of do it a little bit quicker here. So we'll go ahead and turn all these on. I'm going to parent the next one to the camera. I'm going to move forward. And this one's a little trickier because we don't have as much, but it's there. And back it up a little bit. So you can see it lines up pretty close. Okay, and then we'll unparent it back to the beginning. Parent the next one to the camera. About there. Go ahead and unparent it, and we'll line this up. I need to rotate this one on the Z-axis a little bit. And remember, we're going to fix any of the edges just a little bit later, so just to get the general positioning in place. Let's do the next one. We'll go back to the beginning, parent this to the camera. Some dirt here that we can line up. And we can rotate this. And bring the opacity up. Scale and then the opacity. Okay, so I'm going to go to the top view. And there's all of our layers, and I'll go and select them all, and we'll change them to yellow. And so then if I move forward with the camera, you can see everything is set perfectly at the correct distance, and this is going to look really nice. So remember, the camera in here is just to set this up. We're actually going to be using the camera from our 3D program. Now, I'll go ahead and go back to our active camera, zoom in here. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and shut the camera off since we're not going to be using it. And we also have an extra image that we're not going to need. It's just part of the panoramic. And if we need any more of it later, we can switch it out. The other cool thing about the shot, we can incorporate other live action footage in place of some of these still images. So right now we're just using a still image to complete our panoramic. But we could use also a video of that part of the frame. And if we were to pan around 180 degrees, we could have another video of someone standing there pretending to get shot, and then you could incorporate the effects that way. We're obviously not going to get into that for this tutorial, but the benefit here is that you don't have to use 3D motion tracking, and you don't have to do camera matching. You can do all the camera moves from within your 3D program, and ultimately, you know, do whatever you need to do and still get that dynamic shot of, you know, the camera moving and the frame bending as it goes around the edge. Because one thing I want to point out is if I were to take my panoramic images, put them onto a new comp. Now, the thing about panoramic images, if we stitch them together and line them up perfectly, it doesn't matter, because if we link them together, it doesn't look realistic just to pan a big shot. It only looks realistic is if you have the actual orbiting of the scene and the frame bending around the edges. So you kind of want to have a 3D world in order to make the shot look good. Let's go ahead and repeat the edges of our image here. So we'll go to motion tile in the effects and presets, and we'll drop that onto one of our layers here. And this is just going to allow us to extend the edges, get a few more pixels out of the bottom here. We're going to go ahead and set the mirror edges to on, and we're going to output the height to maybe 120. And that just mirrors it, and that's going to be plenty. We'll copy this, edit, copy, and paste it to the other layers, and even our video layer, even though it's probably better that we do that a little bit later. It's just a good way to set that up. And again, I'll shut our camera off here, and this is going to be our setup. Now, here's the other important thing that I want to do. I'm going to take all of this, and I'm going to pre-compose it into a single element. And so I'm going to choose Layer, Pre-compose. And this is going to be called our AE 3D Scene. And we'll go ahead and open the new comp, choose OK. And so it's exactly the same. The only difference is it's in a different comp. And be sure in your project to organize all this. So I'm going to put our render comp in our comps folder and the AE 3D Scene in our pre-comps folder. And that way we keep it organized. And this comp is where we're going to be putting things together, and the render comp is where we're going to actually be compositing them in 3D. So check it out. All these layers are inside of this comp, but if we close it, and here we can turn on this collapse transformation switch. So if you hit F4 and make sure that's up, turn that on. And then if we have a 3D camera, the 3D camera can actually now pan this world. And if we even turn this 3D switch on, I can move this around as if it's a 3D object, and I can rotate it and, just move it around, and all it is a single layer. So what's great about that is when we bring in our camera data, we can simply adjust this 3D scene to match up with the camera of that new world. And that way all the 3D bullet and all the elements that we incorporate will all adhere to one 3D camera. And it's just going to be awesome. So the next thing we want to do is build our assets. And we want to build our muzzle flash and our smoke and the gun action and a fake finger, a bunch of cool things. So this is important to get the ball rolling. And we'll go and jump into that other part right after this.